today we're really pulling back the curtain on something deeply disturbing in global finance.
Something that's evolving at a terrifying speed.
Exactly, the evolution of cryptocurrency fraud. And if you think you know what that looks like, clever hackers, DeFi exploits, you really need to recalibrate.
You do, because the sheer scale and, frankly, the staggering complexity of what our sources are showing, it's a different world.
It really is. It shows that crypto isn't just a sort of decentralized playground for solo entrepreneurs anymore.
Not at all.
Yeah.
It has become a high-value, high-risk target for industrialized organized crime.
And that's the crucial distinction, isn't it? Our sources are showing a complete paradigm shift.
It's a total shift. I mean, we've moved so far beyond the earliest digital Ponzi schemes that were, run out of a basement somewhere.
Right.
We are now grappling with massive, complex, transnational criminal organizations, TCOs, as they're called.
And these TCOs, they blend high-tech cyber fraud with something truly horrifying.
They do. It's a brutal mix of cybercrime and just shocking human exploitation. They're essentially building their empires on modern slavery.
So our mission today is to give you a comprehensive shortcut to understanding this new reality. We're not just going to list a bunch of scams.
No, we're unpacking the anatomy of these vast criminal enterprises. We're going to detail the human cost, which is just shocking, and analyze the massive scale of asset forfeiture.
And we are talking tens of billions of dollars here.
Tens of billions. And most importantly, we're going to identify the cutting-edge, coordinated strategies that law enforcement is using to fight back.
To arm you with the specific essential red flags you need to know to protect yourself and, of course, your assets.
And to set the stage for just how industrialized this has all become, we have to start with the most dramatic example. The one that shows this criminal threat is now geopolitical.
You're talking about the historic indictment of Chen Zi.
Cambodian national Chen Zi, the founder and chairman of the Prince Holding Group. He was charged with directing forced labor scam compounds.
And the initial shock factor here, just to put the scale into perspective, at the same time as that indictment, the Department of Justice filed a civil forfeiture complaint.
And the amount is just staggering.
It's unbelievable.
The complaint targeted approximately 127,271 Bitcoin.
So if you calculate the value, what are we looking at?
At the time of the action, that seizure was valued at around $15 billion, with a B.
$15 billion. That is not a rounding error.
No. This is the largest forfeiture action in the history of the Department of Justice, period. It sets the baseline for the financial might of these TCOs and, I think, the determination of the regulatory response.
Okay, let's unpack those charges against Chen Zi and the Prince Holding Group, because this goes so far beyond standard wire fraud.
It really does.
The indictment alleges wire fraud conspiracy, money laundering conspiracy. But the crucial detail is how he ran his multinational conglomerate. It was a sprawling, human trafficking-backed cyber fraud empire.
And the defining, horrifying element is that direct industrial human cost.
So how did these sophisticated high-tech schemes rely on such horrific, low-tech brutality?
The Prince Group allegedly operated these massive forced labor scam compounds, primarily across Cambodia, but also extending into neighboring countries.
And the victims, who are they?
They were often trafficked from countries like China, Taiwan, Malaysia, under the false pretense of being recruited for high-paying tech jobs, casino work, tech support.
So they weren't recruited as criminals. They were victims who thought they were getting a legitimate job.
Exactly. But the moment they arrived, they were immediately confined. Sources describe these places as prison-like compounds.
What do you mean by prison-like?
I mean, high walls, barbed wire, armed guards. Their passports were seized, and they were forced, under constant threat of violence, to execute online financial scams on an industrial scale.
Around the clock.
Around the clock. They became cogs in a machine designed purely for digital deception.
And what's so disturbing here is the alleged direct operational involvement of Chen Zi himself. This wasn't some hands-off CEO.
No, the indictment suggests he was deeply embedded in the day-to-day management. He allegedly maintained these internal ledgers.
Ledgers for what?
For meticulously tracking the profits generated by specific fraudulent schemes. He even tracked which schemes were being run out of which physical rooms within these massive camps.
That's the industrialization of deception right there, treating human beings as scalable resources for high-volume financial crime.
It is. And if that isn't disturbing enough, the documents indicate a very high level of physical control and violence.
What do we know about that?
The documentation of violence is shocking. The indictment explicitly alleges Chen Zi's direct involvement in using violence against the people confined there.
So he was personally involved.
Allegedly, yes. He possessed images depicting beatings, other forms of torture, and in one chilling communication detailed in the sources, he allegedly communicated with his subordinates about beating individuals who caused trouble,
Horrific.
but with a caveat, a specific instruction. He specified that the victim should not be beaten to death.
My God.
That precise instruction, it just underscores the cold calculation of it all. They needed the victims alive and terrified enough to keep working, but not so injured that they became unprofitable.
It's a profound link between modern financial technology and just pre-modern brutality.
It really is.
So what was the industrialized product of all this human suffering? What fraud mechanism were they forcing these thousands of trapped victims to perpetrate on a global scale?
The primary fraud style, and it's the one that has become synonymous with this new wave of organized crime, is the pig butchering scam.
Or Sha Zhu Pan in Chinese. We hear that term a lot, but let's be absolutely clear for everyone listening. How does the mechanism actually work? Why is it so devastatingly effective?
Pig butchering is a type of investment fraud, but it's preceded by this elaborate month-long social engineering effort.
So it's a long con.
A very long con. The compound workers, they follow detailed scripts to build a deep relationship with the victim, the pig. It's often romantic, sometimes professional.
And they spend weeks just building trust.
Weeks, sometimes months. They might claim to be a successful investor from Hong Kong, or maybe a manager at a cosmetic firm they met on a dating app. The whole goal is to convince the victim to deposit increasing amounts of money into a platform that looks like a legitimate crypto exchange, but is entirely fabricated.
It sounds like a scale issue, though. How did they manage to reach millions of victims at the same time?
They do it using what are called phone farms.
Phone farms.
Yeah. Imagine massive automated call centers. But they're not filled with human agents making calls. Instead, they house thousands of mobile phones, all automated, cycling through millions of mobile numbers.
Wow.
These phone firms facilitate that initial outreach, the mass texting, the quick jump to encrypted apps like Telegram or WhatsApp, and they allow for the continuous management of hundreds of these pig relationships at the same time.
So that's how they get the scale.
That's the technological and labor scaling that allows these TCOs to execute these highly sophisticated attacks on an industrial scale. We're talking millions of innocent victims globally, resulting in billions of dollars in losses.
Given that scale, let's circle back to that $15 billion forfeiture. If this money is moving so rapidly across the blockchain, how did law enforcement even manage to trace and seize 127,000 Bitcoin related to the Prince Group? I mean, this speaks to a massive escalation in forensic capability.
It absolutely does. The Bitcoin they seized were proceeds and instrumentalities of the fraud, previously held in unhosted crypto wallets.
Right.
And the TCOs running these schemes, they are extremely aware that every transaction is on a public ledger. So they use sophisticated layering and money laundering techniques to try and hide the trail.
And our sources detailed two key techniques they use, spraying and funneling. What exactly are they doing there?
These are advanced techniques, and they're designed specifically to defeat conventional chain analysis. Spraying involves taking a large volume of stolen crypto and just fragmenting it.
Breaking it up into little pieces.
Spreading it across thousands, sometimes tens of thousands, of different wallets. The goal is to make the amount in any single wallet look insignificant or unrelated. It complicates tracing and makes the whole thing look fragmented and chaotic.
So it's just creating digital noise. How do they bring it all back together without revealing the trail?
That's where funneling comes in. After the assets have been sprayed and have sat idle for a while, they're strategically reconsolidated.
How?
The criminals use layered transactions, sometimes jumping between different blockchains or using mixing services, though those are now heavily targeted by sanctions. The movements are highly coordinated to funnel the dispersed funds into a few large, clean wallets.
And that conceals the origin.
It tries to. It makes the reaggregation look like organic market movement or maybe institutional trading.
So how does law enforcement's forensic ability counteract this? This is the key insight for our listeners.
Well, the counterforensics operate on pattern recognition and clustering. When an organization like the DOJ or the FBI sees a massive outflow of assets followed by thousands of these small identical inflows into new wallets, that's the spraying, they don't trace just one transaction.
They trace the behavior.
They trace the behavior of the entire set of wallets. Forensic tools use algorithms to identify clusters of wallets that are funded and emptied at the same time, or wallets that frequently exchange funds with known criminal entities.
So even if a small amount goes through a mixer.
Exactly. Even if a small amount jumps through a mixer, the input and output amounts, the timing, the surrounding transaction clusters, all of that often links the activity right back to the original source.
And the $15 billion seizure is the ultimate proof.
It's the ultimate proof that the layering techniques used by the TCOs were, in the end, not enough to hide the financial signature of their crime. This massive forfeiture, combined with the indictment and international sanctions, it demonstrates the coordinated counter-strategy now being used against these networks.
It's incredible. And to really grasp the complexity of prosecuting a group like this and to understand the legal ground that the SEC and DOJ stand on today, we actually need to look back.
We do. We need to trace the legal archetype of digital asset deception back to its roots. The seminal case here, it's far smaller but legally vital, is GAW miners.
GAW miners. That was back in 2014, 2015, right?
Right in that era. It felt like the Wild West of crypto. Bitcoin was becoming famous, and the idea of mining, that computational proof of work, that was the gateway to wealth.
Right. Everyone wanted in on mining.
Precisely. And the core concept that GAW exploited was cloud mining, or mining as a service. It was presented as this great democratization of mining.
So if you were just an ordinary person who didn't have the technical expertise or the money for all the hardware,
or the warehouse space, or the thousands of dollars for hash power, you could just rent that computational power from a provider. This was sold as the risk-free way to participate in the gold rush.
but with Homero Joshua Garza and his companies, Gina Miners, Zen Miners, Zen Cloud, that promise was just the blueprint for a classic Ponzi scheme, wasn't it? Just adapted for the digital age.
It was incredibly deceptive. Garza sold over $20 million worth of these digital contracts called hashlets.
Hashlets.
And they were marketed as shares in their supposed mining capacity, but with extremely aggressive claims. The hashlets were promised to be always profitable and never obsolete.
Wow. Always profitable. That's the first red flag.
It's the biggest red flag,
Yeah.
explicitly assuring investors of high risk-free returns. Anytime you hear guaranteed investment, you should be very, very wary.
So he was selling shares in a mine that fundamentally didn't exist, at least not at the scale he was promising. How did the fraud even sustain itself at first?
Well, the FBI special agent who investigated the case, Mark Munster, he confirmed the deception. While GAW did have some data centers and some mining hardware,
It wasn't nearly enough.
not even close. The volume of hashlets sold represented a staggering amount of computing power and electricity, far, far exceeding his actual capacity. Essentially, he sold ownership of his entire facility maybe 50 or 100 times over.
And since the infrastructure wasn't there, the returns couldn't have been either.
They inevitably fell short. And that shortfall is what forced them into the traditional Ponzi mechanics.
Right. New investor money pays off the old investors.
Exactly. Like any classic Ponzi scheme, the returns paid out to the initial investors were not from genuine mining profits, because those were minimal or non-existent. They came directly from the capital provided by new investors walking in the door.
And didn't he create his own coin to try and hide this?
He did. Garza attempted to further obfuscate the funds and delay detection by creating an internal virtual currency called Paycoin. He forced investors to use his internal ecosystem to manage their so-called returns.
Now, the GW miners case, it seems small compared to the billions we're talking about today, but it established a monumental legal legacy for regulation.
It was foundational. And the reason it matters so much today is that it provided the legal ammunition for basically every major crypto regulatory action that followed. The SEC successfully classified hashlets as unregistered securities.
And they did that by applying the seminal Howey test.
Exactly.
So just remind us, what are the criteria of the Howey test, and how did a digital contract, like a hashlet, meet them?
The Howey test has 4 elements: an investment of money in a common enterprise with a reasonable expectation of profits derived solely from the efforts of others.
And the court agreed on all 4 points.
It did. Investors were putting money into a common pool, and they weren't buying mining hardware to run themselves. They were buying a promise of profit that depended entirely on the technical management, operation, and strategic decisions made by Garza's companies.
That reliance on the efforts of others.
That's the key.
Yeah.
That's what made hashlet securities.
So the key insight here is how this precedent from 2015 directly empowers the SEC's current offensive against, say, DeFi platforms all these years later.
Absolutely. The GAW case provided the template. When the SEC today looks at a modern crypto lending platform or a staking service, even if the code is supposedly decentralized, they apply that same lens.
So if an ordinary investor deposits money expecting a return that's managed by a centralized team,
Even if they call themselves a DAO or a foundation, the SEC argues that the efforts of others element is still met. This precedent is why the SEC is so confident in pursuing actions against major players today. They view nearly all retail investment schemes as unregistered securities offerings unless proven otherwise.
it's fascinating. The modern fight against these sophisticated TCOs like Chenzi's relies on this simple, proven legal foundation led by a small mining scam nearly a decade ago.
And the consequences for Garza reflected that seriousness. He got 21 months in prison, over $9 million in restitution, and the companies faced over $13 million in penalties. The message was clear.
Digital investment contracts promising profit would be treated as securities. And now, the fraud methods have evolved dramatically, but that legal framework is still what they're using.
And the lessons learned from those early scams, that trust can be weaponized, have been scaled up beyond recognition by these modern TCOs operating out of forced labor compounds.
Which brings us to the playbook. The FBI's warning today is simple but crucial. If an unknown person pitches you a crypto investment opportunity, especially if you met them online, you should be extremely wary.
That is the core vulnerability that these TCOs exploit.
Let's break down that playbook. Let's follow a composite victim's journey through the 3 distinct stages of a modern pig butchering scam. Because this transition from what seems like a real relationship to financial ruin is just so manipulative.
It starts with stage 1. Establishing contact and trust. This is the initial lure, and the TCOs cast a massive multi-platform net.
So they're everywhere.
Everywhere. Scammers initiate contact via every digital channel.
Yep.
Unsolicited texts, emails, social media, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, or most notoriously, dating apps like Bumble or Hinge.
And they create these very appealing personas.
Extremely appealing, often foreign-based. A successful jewelry store owner in Hong Kong, a venture capitalist, a high-level manager at a cosmetic firm.
And there's always a rush to move off the main platform where you met them.
That is a critical red flag. The scammer's first move is to quickly shift the conversation to a private messaging platform like WhatsApp or Telegram, often using a different, untraceable phone number.
Why do they do that?
Because those platforms offer better anonymity, and they lack the consumer protection scrutiny of the dating or social media apps. And then they spend weeks cultivating the relationship
Sharing details about a fake successful life.
and casually mentioning their side hustle that generates these unbelievable returns. We've seen case examples of scammers like Emily on WhatsApp, who offers personalized trading signals, or Mark on Bumble, who claims to have some unique AI-driven trading system.
And once they've established that professional or romantic trust, they move to stage 2, the illusion of profit on fraudulent platforms.
This is where the technology of the TCOs really shines. Scammers direct the victim to download a fraudulent website or a slick, fake app that looks incredibly legitimate.
And they use domain names designed to impersonate real exchanges, right?
Exactly. Things like KuCoin Pro Max to impersonate KuCoin, or subtly misspelled names like adex.pw or explosivetrade.com.
The key here is the fabrication of success. How convincing are these platforms?
They are highly convincing. These fabricated exchanges, they use real-time market feeds, but they integrate manipulative code that guarantees the victim sees spectacular success.
So when the victim deposits a small initial amount, say $1,000,
The scammer guides them through a few trades, and the victim's on-screen account balance just rapidly climbs. They see these unrealistic guaranteed returns, maybe 100% daily profits or a 300% return guaranteed by a fictional AI system.
and the scammers use a really powerful psychological lever at this point. They let the victim win a little bit.
Absolutely. The small withdrawal trick is essential. They will allow the victim to withdraw their initial deposit, plus maybe $500 of the fake earnings.
And that one small successful transaction removes almost all suspicion.
It does. The victim now trusts the platform, and much more dangerously, they trust the scammer's guru status. And that confidence is the psychological trigger to invest far larger sums, life savings, retirement funds, sometimes even borrowed money.
Can you elaborate on the different types of structured scams that run on these platforms?
Yes, within this pig butchering umbrella, we see a few specific flavors. First, there are investment group scams.
Okay.
The victim is added to a private Telegram or WhatsApp group, like the AJ Coins group chat. This group is filled with fake accounts. We call them shills, masquerading as successful investors. They constantly praise the guru and inflate confidence, pushing the victim to follow the guru's signals.
What else?
There are signal-selling scams where they sell proprietary trading systems or signals, claiming to have some special AI, but the data is completely fabricated on their fake platform.
And high-yield investment programs.
Right, HYIPs. These are just straightforward digital Ponzi schemes. They often use multi-level marketing to promise outrageous short-term returns like 50% a week that can only be paid by new recruits.
And there are even job scams.
Crypto job scams. The lure is a job, not an investment. Fake job listings, often using major brand names, require the victim to deposit crypto to pay for tasks or training. A commission is promised, but it's never paid, and it requires ever larger deposits to unlock the next level.
And all of this meticulously crafted deception leads to the absolute devastation of stage 3, the withdrawal trap.
This is the moment of maximum financial loss. Once the victim has invested a significant sum, maybe their life savings, and their fake account balance shows, say, $500,000 in profit.
They naturally try to withdraw the funds.
And that's when access is immediately blocked. The scammer, often still pretending to be supportive, introduces a whole host of non-negotiable and often astronomical fees.
And the crucial detail here is that these fees have to be paid as separate payments.
Precisely. The scammer insists the tax or commission can't be deducted from the massive profit you see on the screen. They'll say the funds are frozen on the blockchain because of regulatory issues.
And the demands are shocking.
Genuinely shocking. We see things in the regulatory filings like huge, sudden demands for taxes, a $260,000 tax fee for one platform, a 30% tax for another.
What about other fees?
Commission or service fees, up to 20% of the account value demanded upfront. Verification fees, just outrageous charges like a $73,000 fee just to verify identity, or security deposits due to so-called suspicious activity or garbled code in the blockchain transaction.
And the TCOs use intense psychological pressure to force these payments.
They absolutely do. The platform will freeze the account and give a strict short deadline, sometimes just 48 or 72 hours, to pay the fee.
And they use intimidation.
Threats of permanent account freezing, criminal reporting, or even legal action. One platform threatened to sue a victim and destroy their credit history for failing to maintain a minimum balance of $500,000.
And victims, desperate to access their supposed profits, they often panic and drain their remaining accounts or take out loans to pay this final fee,
compounding their loss disastrously.
So the final crucial warning for anyone listening who has been asked to pay a fee to withdraw their money.
Stop immediately. That money's already gone. Paying the fee will only lose you more money. Do not pay. And absolutely never fall for the common follow-up trap. Asset recovery scams.
Where a new person promises to get your funds back for yet another fee.
It's just another part of the scam. The only step is to report the fraud to the authorities, like the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center, the IC3.
Okay, so we've moved from individual victims to these billion-dollar TCOs, which demands an equally massive, coordinated response.
It does. And crypto enforcement is no longer a peripheral issue. It is a high-priority front. And you can see that in the high volume of SEC actions and the historic scale of DOJ criminal investigations.
This fight is truly borderless, mirroring the nature of the crime. We're seeing a shift to what the DOJ calls the whole-of-government model.
That means bringing together the unique authorities of the DOJ, the FBI, Treasury, and the SEC to attack these crimes from every possible angle.
So the DOJ and the FBI are focused on criminal action, indictments, and that massive asset forfeiture.
Exactly. And their ability to trace and seize assets, which we talked about with spraying and funneling, it's become state-of-the-art. They're no longer just looking at transactions. They were looking at blockchain behavior.
The James Zong case is such a perfect example of this. Can you give us the full detail on that historic seizure?
The Zong case from 2021 is almost cinematic in how it ends. Zong stole over 50,000 Bitcoin from the Silk Road dark web way back in 2012.
And for almost a decade, that massive chunk of crypto worth, over $3.3 billion at the time of seizure, just sat there.
It just sat there. It was one of the greatest unsolved crypto thefts. Law enforcement used incredibly sophisticated proprietary chain analytics software to analyze the movement and non-movement of these funds over 9 years.
And where did the forensic tracing ultimately lead them?
It led them to a specific physical location. And when they executed the search warrant on James Zong's home in Georgia, they didn't find a massive server farm. They found something mundane.
What did they find?
They located a single-board computer, a small, inexpensive piece of hardware hidden inside a safe which was submerged under blankets, and then tucked inside an empty popcorn tin.
A $3.36 billion haul hidden in a popcorn tin. That detail just emphasizes that criminals often fail at that final physical layer of security.
It highlights the dual nature of these investigations. The tech component allows law enforcement to narrow down the suspects and locate the digital addresses, but traditional police work, a physical search warrant, was necessary to actually retrieve the asset.
That seizure demonstrated beyond any doubt the effectiveness of combining cutting-edge blockchain analysis with the power of the criminal indictment process.
Real good.
So, moving beyond criminal prosecution, the Treasury Department uses financial warfare to disrupt the entire infrastructure of these TCOs. How do Treasury's entities, OFAC and FinCEN, target these criminal financial flows?
The Treasury targets the ability of TCOs to even interface with the legitimate global financial system. The Office of Foreign Assets Control, OFAC, can issue sanctions that freeze assets and prohibit transactions with designated entities.
For example?
For instance, OFAC has announced sanctions against entities related to the Prince Group and crucially sanctioned the Democratic Karen Benevolent Army in Burma for running scam compounds.
And by sanctioning these groups, they force all compliant institutions to act.
Immediately. Banks, exchanges, payment processors, they all have to block any associated addresses.
And FinCEN's authority under Section 311 of the USA Patriot Act, that's arguably the most potent financial weapon they have. What's the mechanism of that designation?
Section 311 is the nuclear option for financial disruption. FinCEN uses financial intelligence to designate an entity as a primary money laundering concern.
And that designation does more than just warn.
It compels. Once invoked, U.S. financial institutions are prohibited from opening or maintaining correspondent accounts for that designated entity. This effectively severs the TCO from the U.S. financial system and, by extension, the dollar-pegged stablecoin economy, which is globally dominant.
So if a TCO relies on stablecoins, this designation forces legitimate global crypto exchanges to act immediately.
Absolutely. When FinCEN designated the Cambodia-based Huoni Group for laundering billions, at least $4 billion from scams and North Korean cyber attacks, it required every U.S.-linked business, including every major crypto exchange and stablecoin issuer worldwide, to immediately perform enhanced due diligence and terminate transactions with Huoni.
And if they fail to comply,
those exchanges risk being sanctioned themselves. This is how the U.S. government projects its financial power globally to fight borderless crypto crime. They make it so the criminals can't easily convert their stolen crypto into fiat or widely accepted stablecoins.
And meanwhile, the SEC continues its regulatory enforcement heavily based on that GAW miners precedent we talked about.
The SEC's approach under Chair Gensler is relentlessly enforcement-driven. They've initiated over 125 enforcement actions since 2021, focusing narrowly on the concept of unregistered securities offerings using the Howey test.
And we've seen actions against major crypto lending platforms, staking programs,
the MetaMask staking service, DeFi operators like Rary Capital, and even NFT creators who use promotional techniques that promised profit based on the creators' efforts.
Now, the SEC's relentless enforcement stance is, well, the application of the Howey test to modern decentralized systems is controversial. What's the basis for that criticism?
That's the core tension in the industry right now. Critics argue that applying a 70-year-old test, originally designed for citrus grows, to complex autonomous smart contracts fundamentally misunderstands decentralization.
They argue that once a protocol is sufficiently decentralized, there are no efforts of others.
That's the argument. But the SEC is generally unmoved. They argue that early promotional efforts, continuous maintenance by a core development team, or centralized custody arrangements still satisfy the Howey test. And the massive number of actions with the FBI assisting on 38 cases since 2017, it shows that regardless of the legal controversy, the combined regulatory and criminal force is immense and coordinated.
They're putting immense pressure on all corners of the digital asset industry.
They are.
Okay, we've mapped the criminal landscape and the government response. Now let's turn to individual defense. The threat level is high, the scams are sophisticated, the FBI warning remains the same. If you met someone online and they pitch a crypto investment, that is your ultimate red flag.
The key to individual protection is moving from emotional trust to systematic verification. You have to look past the illusion of guaranteed profits.
So first, always watch for the promises that are just too good to be true.
Guaranteed returns, instant payouts, risk-free earnings. Scammers rely on manufactured urgency and the fear of missing out, or FOMO. If you are pressured to act fast or pay a fee immediately, You have to pause and verify.
That verification process or due diligence needs to be more robust than ever. What are the essential steps?
Always, always. Research the company name plus the word scam online. But go further. Verify the official registration and licensing status with regulatory bodies like the DFPI or the SEC.
And check the URL.
Critically, check the URL for misspellings or subtle deviations that impersonate legitimate platforms. A single misplaced letter or an extra word like Promax is a major indicator of a fraudulent site designed to capture your login information. Never download suspicious apps unless you can verify their legitimacy through official, vetted app stores.
And on a personal security level, the basics of crypto custody must be sacrosanct.
They must be. Never share private keys or your private identifying information with unknown individuals. Your private keys are the final authority over your funds. If anyone asks for them, they're trying to steal everything.
And again, the ultimate financial red flag that terminates the interaction.
If you are asked to pay additional fees, taxes, or commissions to withdraw your own money after seeing profits, the fraud is complete. Stop immediately, cease all communication, and report the event.
Now let's look at enterprise defense. For exchanges, custodians, or organizations managing billions in crypto assets, the threat profile is existential. A security failure can result in instantaneous, catastrophic loss.
The risk is amplified by the internal structure of many crypto organizations. Mandian has highlighted that these firms, driven by market pressure, often have these rapid development life cycles. They rely heavily on unmanaged workforces contractors working on personal devices.
And they often focus intensely on wallet security, but neglect fundamental enterprise security practices.
Exactly. Things like network segmentation or endpoint monitoring. This creates massive security debt and a huge expanded attack surface.
So what are the gold standards for these organizations to follow?
Adherence to the Cryptocurrency Security Standard, or CCSS, is strongly recommended. Think of it as the ISO 27001 equivalent, but specifically tailored for digital asset custodianship. It outlines requirements for key generation, storage, usage.
But the foundation of defense is in rigorous cold wallet security.
It is. Which brings us to multi-signature wallet requirements.
So why is multisig essential? And what are the specific requirements Mandiant recommends for securing these smart contracts?
Multi-signature or multi-sig smart contracts require multiple private key holders to sign off on a transaction before it can execute. This distributes trust and minimizes the risk of a single point of failure like one compromised employee or one stolen key.
And Mandiant recommends extreme rigor here.
They do. First, for the signature threshold. Enforce a minimum requirement of at least 4 signatures to authorize any significant transaction.
Why 4 and not, say, 3?
Because that threshold is specifically designed to mitigate internal collusion and external coercion. It makes it much harder for a small group of bad actors to act without being detected.
That's next.
Hardware diversity. Signatures must originate from clear-signing capable hardware wallets from multiple vendors. Ledger, Trezor.
So you don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Exactly. If there's a 0-day vulnerability in one manufacturer's firmware, your whole system isn't instantly compromised. And third, geographic dispersion.
Meaning the signer should be in different places.
In geographically dispersed locations with different internet connections, this mitigates the risk of simultaneous physical coercion. A criminal group can't just raid one office and compromise all the signers at once.
That level of rigor is impressive, but it speaks volumes about the level of threat these places face. What about mitigating the risk of inside jobs or long-term compromise?
That falls under secrets management and privileged access. Organizations have to rotate secrets related to critical wallets frequently, ideally, monthly. And privileged secrets, like master seed phrases or signing keys, should never be stored locally on user systems or checked into code repositories like GitHub.
Because those are prime targets.
Prime targets for threat actors.
Finally, we need to address the initial access threat. How do the criminals get their foot in the door to eventually target a developer's workstation?
The initial access vector is increasingly focused on the developer or their workstation, since they have the highest level of access to the infrastructure.
So they're going after the people with the keys to the kingdom.
They are. Threat actors frequently use targeted phishing campaigns disguised as legitimate outreach on professional platforms like Slack, Telegram, or LinkedIn. We see highly specific lures, sometimes fake job opportunities or coding challenges, designed specifically to deliver malware or steal credentials.
So organizations must enforce least privilege access.
and implement heightened monitoring and conduct ongoing security awareness training that's tailored specifically to recognizing these social engineering tactics that target technical personnel.
So what does this all mean when we synthesize the entire deep dive? We've witnessed the sophistication of crypto fraud just escalate dramatically.
We really have.
We moved from simple, localized Ponzi's like GAW miners, which set the necessary legal precedent, to these complex, highly structured, transnational criminal organizations like the Prince Group.
Groups that seamlessly integrate human trafficking with cyber-enabled financial crime for billions in illicit profits.
And the regulatory response has had to evolve just as dramatically. It's moved to a coordinated whole-of-government model.
And law enforcement now uses advanced forensic tracing that can defeat techniques like spraying and funneling. They can locate billions of dollars hidden in a popcorn tin.
And they can utilize potent financial weapons like FinCEN's Section 311 to cut off these criminal enterprises at their financial roots wherever they operate globally.
It's a whole new ballgame.
For you, the listener, the key takeaway is clear. The era of relying on digital trust is over. Whether you're an individual investor or an organization managing critical infrastructure, that digital trust must be systematically replaced by technical, verifiable proof.
Knowing that professional criminals are constantly trying to exploit behavioral and structural vulnerabilities at every single step of the chain.
The battle is now between the instantaneous, borderless nature of crypto transactions and the methodical, coordinated efforts of global law enforcement.
Which brings up a final provocative thought: the increasing government scrutiny on illicit fund flows. It compels legitimate digital asset providers to professionalize compliance. They have to use enhanced chain analytics, mandatory KYC, digital identity credentialing systems, all to align blockchain finance with traditional regulatory standards.
So the question is,
Will these necessary tools, designed specifically to fight crime and protect consumers from these TCOs, also fundamentally change the nature of decentralization for all users in the near future? Will it bring us closer to a fully trackable, regulated digital economy?